Thank you so much. My name is Dave Cobb. I am the Senior Creative Director for the ThinkWell Group. We are a strange little multidisciplinary firm in Burbank that deals in location-based entertainment and experience design. We do everything from fountain shows to boat rides to theme parks to dinosaur shows. And recently we just opened the Warner Brothers Studio Tour Leavesden, which features the making of Harry Potter. It's a 150,000 square foot, 3.5-hour walking tour through all of the sets, props, and costumes from the Harry Potter series in the actual location where all the film shot. And we also just finished designing a 100-acre theme park that's slated for just outside Beijing, China, that is retelling the legendary 16th century stories of the Monkey King. But enough of the sales pitch. 90% of the time when I tell people what I do, they respond with this. And my answer is usually this, which makes them go, because why does a roller coaster need a rider? Well, it needs a lot. It needs a writer. It needs a lot of things. It needs a lot of multidisciplinary positions. We, in the theme park industry and the experience industry, deal with practically any discipline you can think of. We're very prototypical, and we synthesize ideas from lots of different industries. We owe our strange jobs to Walt Disney in 1955 when he opened Disneyland. Well, oh, absolutely. Give it up. Pass holder. How many pass holders do we have in the audience? Pass holds. Awesome. Me too. Treat the park like it's your own goddamn park, right? Yeah. What Walt did was he took the stories from his media empire and he combined them with theatrical and magical technology, magic illusions, and the burgeoning technology of the day like industrial controls and robotics, and immersed audiences in his stories in ways they'd never really seen before, and came up with the term Imagineering to describe that incredible art form of technology and storytelling put together. It's really just theater when it comes down to it. In 1914, Winsor McCay animated Gertie the dinosaur and projected it on a big screen on a stage and interacted with her and created a live dinosaur performance. What we would call animatronics really were developed in the 16th century Renaissance and 12th century Arabic automata, which were basically clockwork robots that were built to entertain the royals. And even go back as far as the Greeks, what we call Deus Ex Machina is not just a tired literary trope. It was literally a crane that lowered people dressed as gods onto the stage. So technology has always served a purpose in telling a story and entertaining people. But what Walt did was he pulled down the proscenium. The real world became magical. He took the raw components of amusement and added context and story. Spinning carnival rides became flights with Dumbo. Roller coasters became bobsled rides to the Matterhorn. The crass hodgepodge of the Midway evolved into the orderly, aspirational theater of the Magic Kingdom. Disney parks don't have attractions, don't have rides, they have attractions. They're fully formed systems of experience that use psychological trickery and theatrical techniques to immerse people in stories. These started out mostly as passive operettas, sort of observed from the safety of haunted doom buggies and pirate boats. But as audiences got more sophisticated, in the 80s and 90s, these evolved into first-person narratives where the guests and the riders were actually written right into the narrative, like bombing the trench of the Death Star in Star Tours or spelunking cursed temples with Indiana Jones. And theme parks actually aren't really the only industry that is affected by this sort of participatory change and expectation from audiences. Museums, aquariums, planetariums, this is a huge part of our industry because they actually compete dollar for dollar right alongside theme parks as the kind of third space that people like to spend their money on with their family to go out and do things. So museums became, over the last 20 or 30 years, became less about boxes full of dead stuff and more about theatrical techniques and intervention that would actually inspire and educate people. So what we do is story and technology in an environment with some sort of social catharsis. And as audiences have evolved and gameplay and immersion and interactivity has become more of an expectation with audiences, the concept of adding play to this is a potent tool in our arsenal. And theme parks took an early step in this with interactive dark rides like Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters and Toy Story Mania at Disney, Men in Black Alien Attack at Universal Florida, which I was the creative director for, and Scooby-Doo Ghost Blasters. And these are rides where you basically rode through, and it was a ride-through shooting gallery. And the simple act of gathering a score made the rides completely repeatable. People want to do them over and over again, get their score better. But the simple shooting gallery mechanic was a very simple play element that both gamers and non-gamers could do. And that's a real interesting distinction for our industry. Pardon me. In that we're not the long tail. We can't design something that only 10 people want to see. Everything we do is a really wide demographic. And we don't develop something digital and distribute it on the internet to millions of people. We develop one thing and hope that millions of people come to it. So at ThinkWell, we actually address that challenge of design with a swimming analogy. Audiences come in three types to us. The first is waiters. Waiters are people who don't want to exert too much effort, but they want to get something good for their money, right? They're not going to try really hard, but they want to get something good. Swimmers are people who are going to go with their friends, probably engage a little more, maybe go a couple of times a year. And divers. Divers are people who are immersed all the time. Half the people here are probably divers. They're going to love it. They're going to blog about it. They're going to tell their friends. The key is to design something that works for all of these people, but also something that gives each one of these audiences something different and gives them each an emotional souvenir that gives a special part of their experience a resonance to just them. And that's how we approach all of our designs. And gamification and play helps us do that. Because what it does is, nowadays, people expect to be engaged and they want to play along. There's a lot more buy-in with audiences than the last couple of decades. So adding layers of gamification to things adds adaptability and personalization and helps us remove boundaries between us and our audience and adapt to those different layers of swimmers in different ways. Two projects that we recently did at ThinkWell address this in pretty cool ways. The first is called The Show at the Pier at Atlantic City Pier. They came to us with a very interesting challenge. They had a dead spot at the terminus point, at the end of their retail development. There was basically a dead end where people weren't coming through, and they wanted to get more foot traffic for all the retail. They wanted a fountain show, but we said, you want something a little different. So we actually partnered with Carnegie Mellon. They have an incredible program at CMU called the Entertainment Technology Center, and it's their theater department and their computer science department mashed together. And they help us develop really cool technologies. So using various sensing technologies, not only is there an hourly show every hour at this fountain, the fountain actually plays games with people. At the 15, 30, and 45-minute marks, it starts sensing people gathering for the shows, and it plays things like Follow Me or Color Wars, or plays music and dares people to dance. It's all done completely non-verbally, done with music and sound effects only. And it managed to not only create a huge draw and a repeatable attraction for the pier, but it raised the tenant rates for all the retail that surround it. All right, you know. Nature Quest. This was at the Fernbank Natural History Museum in Atlanta. And this was a really interesting museum in that they had a kids area, like a lot of museums do, like a kids museum section. But it was a little long in the tooth. It was from the 80s. It was lots of dusty old touchscreens and nothing really great. They came to us with a challenge that around Atlanta is one of the most vibrant and largest urban forests in all of the country. And so they wanted to create something that would inspire young museum goers, we're talking pre-reading, like really young kids, with a love for the local ecosystems of the Southeast that they could take with them as they grow up. So rather than a bunch of didactic museum exhibits, we created a play space. And this is a huge multi-level space with 4 different biomes that sort of theatrically recreate different regions of Atlanta. And embedded in that is all this technology, like there's RFID acorns and nuts and shells that you put in front of a mirror and you see what they grow into. There's augmented reality night vision goggles where you can pan through the space and see what animals will be there at night. And what's great is there's cool technology, but it's not all about technology. We also completely sort of gamified and edumacated the entire space. Everything you see in this, down to the last leaf, is species accurate. This isn't just scenery. The entire room is a teaching moment. It's basically one big classroom. So we created a series of challenge cards that are sort of like scavenger hunt cards, and each of them is for a different age group, or a different grade level, or a different reading level, or a different time of year. So basically the space never gets old and constantly has a different way to play. So we do have a lot of stuff going on at Thinkwell, most of which, unfortunately, I can't tell you about. But we do have in the back, at the back bar, Pintura, which is this simple little experimental demo that our digital genius, Thaddeus Bechtel, will walk you through at the break. Lots of fun to play around with. But I thought I'd show you some other stuff that's been inspiring us lately. We look all over, not just theme parks, but all over the world at different design disciplines. And we always find stuff that we like to show people that inspire us. I don't know if anybody went to Coachella 2011. This was one of the most amazing moments of my life. Arcade Fire partnered with Chris Milk and the Creators Project and had thousands of beach balls rain on top of the audience during their final set. What's amazing is each one of those beach balls had an LED light inside of it and was an addressable pixel. So as the guests play with those balls, they were actually part of the light show as the lights washed through the audience. So they became part of the act. As if that wasn't cool enough, the final signal sent to the balls at the end of the act was react to music. They had a microphone inside of them, so they became a light organ you could bring home with you. I remember seeing cars, like people had 3 or 4 of them in the back seat, and they were just pulsing as they left the show. As if that wasn't cool enough, if you were adventurous enough to pop it, you got inside and saw the widget inside. It had a web address on it. And the web address had hacking instructions. So now they have this huge user base of people who are extending the use of the original widget past the time and space of the original event, which I absolutely love. Disney is, of course, somebody we look to a lot for inspiration. They're the big dog. They do a lot of good stuff. What's the #1 bad thing about being at Disneyland? Lines. In all of the Disney parks and all of their exit polls, the #1 guest complaint is for lines. So they started to address it recently. They put in interactive elements. This is mostly at the Florida park, but they put in simple interactive elements that relate to the story. Interactive crypt organs at the Haunted Mansion, or walls of digital honey oozing down the walls in the Winnie the Pooh ride. And these are just simple distractions that are thematic to the story, tell a little bit of the story while you're waiting in line, take some of the pain out of waiting. But they did something even cooler. They flipped that on their ear. Rather than just saying, hey, we're going to put stuff in an existing line, why don't we replace the line entirely, shall we? Everybody knows the Dumbo ride. It's the longest wait in the park because it's a stop-and-start ride. It's very low capacity. In Florida, they built a circus tent behind it. Families go into the circus tent, and they're given a ticket to Dumbo that is actually a restaurant pager. This is a multi-story playground themed like a circus, where the kids play for 45 minutes while the parents sit in air-conditioned comfort. Right? When the restaurant pager goes off, they stroll onto the ride, no waiting at all. I kind of hate them for coming up with this, because I wish I had thought of it. This sort of gameplay is now rippling into the park experience. They did this thing called Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom that's a collectible card Pokemon-style game for about ages 4 to 8. So while the family's enjoying the rides and shows of the park and the adults are seeing other things, the kids have this secret mission around the park where they show these cards to portals, and the portals erupt into magic illusions and video moments. And it unlocks a story where the kids discover that all the villains of the Disney universe are plotting to take over the park, and only they can fix it. And so they battle with these cards and trade with other kids in the park. It's pretty genius. And then they took it one step further. Enchanted Tales with Belle, this is pretty incredible. Everybody's been to the character meet and greet. If you have kids, you know you got to wait in line and stand next to Mickey. They take your picture. They charge you $50. You walk out. And they changed it completely. They made it an attraction. Enchanted Tales with Belle is a multi-stage walkthrough in Florida where guests, they take a character meet and greet and add things like audio and lighting and special effects and a multi-point sort of walkthrough, like a walkthrough dark ride almost. And then the last scene, you're all there to entertain Belle, and everybody in the group, adults and kids, are given a role in the Beauty and the Beast movie to play, and it becomes this little school play version of Beauty and the Beast that everybody gets to retell with Belle and a spectacular Lumiere animatronic behind her. They've taken what used to be this boring wait in line and take a picture and made it completely participatory. The guests actually get to role play along with the stories they love. So this is really indicative of the kind of new thinking where they really want to get the guests to co-create what's going on in their day at a Disney park. So we have a lot of fans in the theme park industry. We call them foamers because they tend to foam at the mouth a little. That's not a negative criticism. I'm one of them, so I get it. One of the reasons I think they foam a lot is because, as far as fans are concerned, it's one of the few fandoms that can't dabble in their own fandom. You know, if you like movies or comic books, great, go nuts. Make your own, distribute it online. It's kind of hard to make your own theme park, right? So, but that hasn't stopped people. Wishing Stars is an iPhone app that allows you to play a scavenger hunt game at Disneyland. You can download this on the App Store right now. And this is fan-created. Most importantly, none of the graphics or photos in it are any copyrighted material from Disney. He's totally allowed to sell this. So we created a scavenger hunt at Disneyland that uses the GPS of your phone and this beautiful graphic interface that he's created. Here's what's most amazing. This came out in 2008, 3 years before Disney had any park-specific apps in the App Store. Made by a fan. Another part of fandom that is sort of showing up in parks is cosplay. These are all kids who love Harry Potter. This is not our Harry Potter that I told you about. This is the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which is the theme park in Orlando that's soon coming here in about 4 or 5 years to Universal Hollywood. Nobody on here, except for this guy that's the porter, these are all fans. Nobody's an employee. This is the only employee here. These kids show up at the park in costume and recreate scenes from the movie for YouTube and for their cell phones, for their cameras. The best story, though, was I saw a bunch of kids sitting at a table behind one of the restaurants, and they were like 14. They were too young to work there. They were all in full Hogwarts robes, right? Drinking their butterbeer, books open, and I look, and they're modern textbooks. These kids were doing their homework. They were cosplaying as Hogwarts students doing their homework. I'm sure Universal did not intend the space to be used that way, but that's awesome that they do that. It's pretty great. Of course, Disney makes a bundle off of cosplay. If you've ever heard of something called the Bibbidi Boppidi Boutique, if you have a little girl, you probably have. This is a license to print money. These are themed makeovers where your little girl can dress up like a princess. There's a version called the Pirates League where you can dress up like a pirate if you want. They make a lot of money off this. But, you know, there's a rule at the Disney parks that adults are not allowed to wear costumes. Boo. Well, yeah, I get it, though, right? You don't want your kids sidling up to some creepy Peter Pan, right? I mean, they got to have some accountability for the right? Okay, so I get it. It's a gray area, though. Like, what are you going to card people? Like, how old do they have to be? So, you know what? Fans have figured it out. I was in the park about 2 months ago, and I'm standing in line, and these girls come walking by, and they are dressed a little too nice to be in a theme park. Like, they're putting on the dog. And one girl had, like, a yellow dress and a blue top and a little hairband with a red bow in it. And then her friend had a purple dress with a very long braid and a pin that was a chameleon. And I'm like, you're Rapunzel and you're Snow White. And they looked at me and went, shh. Look up Disney-inspired fashions online, and you will find about 500 Pinterest boards. This was started by pass holders. This is not a general fashion thing. This is girls who go to the park and are adults and want to cosplay and aren't allowed to. So they've figured out how to do it. And they're gaming the system. So it's this kind of user-created content and embracing of the space and embracing of the idea that a physical place where attractions happen isn't just rides and shows. It also depends on the participation of the person for it to be a good experience. And so at ThinkWell, we really love that we're evolving our audience to be more participatory and expect that level. We know that places are really cool and stories told in them are great, but playing along with those two things at once is really what's going to bring us into the future. Thank you for your time.